Hey folks, welcome to my channel. It's Brittany, your friendly plant-loving internet stranger, and I'm back with a calathea repotting today. I forgot to mention that this is also a struggle plant, calathea. It's only recently become a struggle plant. Whenever I see this particular calathea's leaves start to curl, I'll give it some water and it usually bounces back overnight. However, this time was a bit different. I noticed that the leaves did not unfurl the day after watering it, which I thought was a bit unusual. And then I picked the plant up to discover that it was in fact root bound. Here's a picture of what this calathea normally looks like. Happy, vibrant, green. And here's what she's looking like today. Homegirl is looking really sad and I'm disappointed. This is a calathea vittata and she's not looking great. But because I know she is thirsty and she is very, very root bound, I'm gonna get her together. Right now you can only see a tiny root peeking through. It's actually a pretty substantial root. It's given tarantula arms peeking through, if you can see that there. And it was sticking out a bit further, but I shifted it a little bit. I was trying to pull the plant and removed it a little bit so the roots did come through the drainage holes, but I just straightened one of the roots and it's pretty, you can definitely see that it's a root there. So when I saw that she was root bound, I said we have to repot her. I haven't quite decided if I want to repot her in soil or if I want to pot her up in a plastic cup with some sphagnum moss. I've been doing that for a few of the plants that I'm transplanting from outside into the house for the winter. And I kind of want to try that out on a calathea because I know calatheas really like humidity. They're tropical plants. So I'm wondering if being in a damper environment that's not soil, So I'm wondering if being in a damper root environment in moss as opposed to soil would make a difference. We'll see. Most of the plants that I have propagated in sphagnum moss do really well. So I'm wondering if this calathea would also enjoy living in sphagnum moss. I don't know, we'll figure it out. But the first thing I want to do is get this plant out of this pot to take a look at its root system. So if you're new around these parts, what you need to know about me is I like to make my life easy. So when I'm repotting my plants, making my life easier means having a soil receptacle. So for today's video, I'm going to be using this random plastic bag that some appliance was wrapped up in that has some choking hazard lingo on it, but that's fine because what I'm gonna do is put that entire pot into this bag, pull the plant out, all the soil is gonna fall out into this bag and it's gonna make my cleanup process so smooth. All right, so we have our plant, we have our plastic bag. I'm just gonna sit this plant inside of this bag, pull it out, let the soil fall into the bag. And I'm pausing here a little because the roots are getting stuck in the drainage holes and I don't want to rip them. So I just took a minute to actually gently push them through. And here's what the root system is looking like. You can see that it is pretty tightly wound around the bottom there. Plus these roots that were dangling from the middle were actually going through the drainage holes. So given the way that this plant is looking and the way that these roots are kind of wound up, I think I may just gently loosen the roots a bit and just repot it into a regular pot and add more soil to it. I don't want to disturb this too much though. I'll probably just knock a little bit of the soil from the bottom and loosen up the top here and then just put this right into a planter. So once I remove the soil from this plant, I am going to determine which size pot I want to put it in. My other calatheas are in plastic pots. They are in pots that are very similar to this, just a larger size because they are larger plants. So I'm thinking that I may actually remove a layer of soil from the top and loosen the roots and kind of scratch off some of the soil from the bottom and the sides gently, making sure not to disturb or break the roots. I may be able to fit it in this pot. This pot is pretty much the same size as the pot that I just took it out of, but I think that with some soil removed, it might actually thrive in this pot. And I'm moving to a space where I want my plants to become root bound because they seem to grow a little bit better when they are root bound. So we're gonna see how this works out. So one thing I'm noticing as I am removing the soil from the top was nice and soft because I actually just watered this plant recently, and it kind of broke off, or not broke off, but came off really easily. Whereas at the bottom here, the water had not been able to like penetrate through the soil, and the roots had not been able to absorb the water at all because they were just too tightly packed in there. So it's really hard. The roots down here are really hard. They are not breaking off and they still look alive. They just couldn't access the water properly. So I'm being really, really gentle in peeling back these layers of roots so that I can get it back into a pot, add some fresh soil, and then water it so that the roots can actually be able to absorb the water. So I'm finding that a better way than just trying to loosen the roots from the bottom is to actually, while the plant is in the bag, because again, I'm trying to like minimize the mess here, I'm running my finger through the spaces in between the roots. As you can see, the roots are kind of running vertically. As I'm running my fingers in between the roots, it's just knocking that soil away and it's loosening the roots from the top down without breaking it. Okay, so I got enough of the soil off, and as you can see, I didn't really disturb the shape too much. It was less about disturbing the shape and more about removing a lot of the soil that was like packed in between the roots. The roots themselves are like very, very bound together, so I'm going to leave them alone. I got them as loose as I could. At the bottom here, you can see they're pretty loose. On the sides, they're still pretty fully developed. I am going to put this plant into this pot. It has more than enough space. It actually seems pretty spacious. The roots fit comfortably. It is still about the same size as the other pot that I took it out of, but that's okay because it has more space now that some of that soil has been knocked off. And I am going to put a thin layer of soil at the bottom, set the plant back on top of it, and then fill it in around the edges, basically to fill the spaces between the edges of the pot and the plant itself. And then as it starts to take shape and settle into this pot, all of the soil that I have knocked off, the new soil is going to settle into those spots. The roots will start to grow into this pot. It'll be a lot more comfortable. The plant will have more space inside of the pot, and the roots will be able to absorb the water as I am watering it. I think given the state of the roots, I will water it from the top, but I'm probably going to also set it in some water so that it can self-water from the bottom, at least just for today as I'm watering it after I've repotted, so that the roots can loosen a little bit more, actually be able to absorb the water, and then moving forward, I'll just continue it to water it from the top if I notice that the leaves open up. Once the leaves start to soften and open up and unroll, that will be an indicator to me that the plant is actually absorbing water properly. And I think that we can rehab this plant just given the state of some of the leaves. Like this leaf is pretty good. These leaves are fine. The brown leaves, Obviously they're brown now, so they don't have much life left in them. And then these, I feel, are on the verge. They're on the edge of glory, right? So if I continue to leave this plant root bound and not water them, then all of these like really significantly curled leaves are just going to turn brown, like the brown leaves here, and they'll die. But I want to get them back to, at a minimum, like this space right here where these are not as significantly curled because they did absorb some water. It just seems like these are not really absorbing any water at all. So we're going to see. I'm going to get this repotted. I'm going to water it, and then we'll check back in a few weeks or a month or so and see how this plant is adjusting to its new home in this pot. The plant is all potted up. She's still looking like she's on the struggle bus right now. But once we get her watered and she becomes acclimated to her new home, hopefully the leaves will open back up and it'll look a lot better. So I will check in on this plant in about a month or so to see how it is adjusting to its new pot. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, feel free to give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe for more plant content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.